You're good.
Good afternoon. It is 6:02, and I now call this meeting of the July 22nd regular meeting of the Summers County Board of Education to order. Let the minutes reflect that we have 4 members present and 1 member, Mr. Duncan, available on the phone. I'd like to ask Mr. Angel if he could do the invocation and pledge for us, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you again, Lord, thankful for the many blessings that you give us each and every day, Lord. We thank you for our Summers County schools, our employees, our students, and our office staff at the board office, Lord. We just pray as we go through this agenda tonight, Lord, that you would give us the wisdom and the knowledge that we need to review each item and to make the proper decisions to benefit the kids in this county. We just ask that you continue to bless our employees and our students in the upcoming school year. We pray that you'll bring them back to us safely and that we'll have a good school year. It's in Jesus' name we ask these things, and amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Item number 3, approval of the agenda and adjustments. I have been asked if we could move community volunteerism up and do that next because we have some presenters who have an event that they need to attend elsewhere. So if that would be okay, could I have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the requested adjustment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Kenny, seconded by Jay. Do you have any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained. Let the minutes reflect that by a 5-0 vote, that has passed. Do I have any other requested adjustments for the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda with the aforementioned change.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining. Let the minutes reflect by a 5-0 vote, the agenda has been approved. Community volunteerism.
Okay, we have 3 individuals who came tonight that we would like to publicly praise for being with our students this summer. From the West Virginia Extension, or as I know it growing up, I was part of 4-H. You were there with 4-H, but we have 2 ladies here, Leslie Woodrum and Victoria Cox, who were there this summer. Do you 2 mind kind of letting the board know what you all kind of worked on when you were here this summer? Because you guys did a great job. And when I showed up, they were smiling and acted like they were having a good time. And it was good to see kids see other extensions that can be offered in a school setting other than the academics. So I'll turn it over to you ladies if you'd like to go ahead and talk a little bit to the board.
Sure. We are from the Extension Office, so we did about 4 weeks worth of activities, and it was pretty much the first time we've been in person with kids in over a year. So we probably were pretty excited to be with them, although tired at the end. So we did some nutrition lessons with them. Victoria did those. We did Rethink Your Drink, which encourages children to drink fewer sugary beverages and more water. I won't judge you. And then we did a walking challenge. So every day that the weather was nice, we tried to go outside. The Board of Ed was very gracious to buy inexpensive trackers for kids. So we really tried to get some exercise in there too, to get them kind of beyond the screens for a while. And then we did a lot of different STEM activities. We did marshmallow catapults and UV bead bracelets and tie-dye masks using permanent markers and rubbing alcohol. And you know, we had a good time. And I don't know if Victoria has anything she wants to say about the nutrition lessons, but yeah, we had a good time. It was an adventure on some days, but yeah. So a lot of STEM, a lot of nutrition, and hopefully we can get back into schools this fall.
Definitely. Do you have anything to add?
I will say with our walking challenge, we were pretty impressed. The kids only had their trackers during the hours that they were at STEM camp, and they walked over 1 million and some steps. I think it was like 1.8 million,
Yeah.
I think, over the course of the 4 weeks. So that's pretty good for little kids.
Yeah, on the first day they got the trackers, especially the kindergarten and first grade. Every 5 seconds, come up, how many do I have now? You have 332. They go, now how many? 500. So once they learned how to hit the button, we were a little happier.
While I was there, the two things I learned about was the trackers and the marshmallows.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that was the main thing, but you know, when you're a kid, that's pretty, and they did keep looking. I'm like, what are they checking? And I was told they got you guys
Yeah.
handed out I got it. Okay.
Yeah,
But that's good.
they love the catapults. We shot cotton balls, not marshmallows, because I just had a hunch about marshmallows.
Well, we just want to thank you all for that. And then also from Reach, Clark Johnson is here. We also have Sully Webb, Erica Morrell, and Peyton Matheny. But Clark is here tonight. We want to thank him for being there with Reach. Do you have anything to add that you all did this summer that you could let the board know about?
We had a weekly book and we did crafts based off of that book. Definitely nothing with the nutrition and the drinking water because I had my daily Sprite in there, but that's beyond the point. But yeah, just weekly crafts with the books, and we also took them on nature walks to get them some exercise.
Well, we appreciate both groups, and we want to continue to do that with our school setting because regardless of pandemic or not, it's just good to bring other entities to help our youngsters out as they get older, because that old saying, it takes a village, and you can see everybody in this room wanting to help out youngsters, but we appreciate it. And the tie-dye, I did see some boys talking about, they got into that a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it was pretty cool.
We did have to have lessons on how we use permanent
Yeah, I
markers.
bet you did. You guys have any questions for them at all, or?
I don't, just
No, but
appreciate
thank
what
you.
you
Thank
did.
you.
For donating your time.
Well, you are welcome to go to the poolside for Vacation Bible School.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Thank
guys,
you.
I appreciate you.
In Ken's defense, that's his only pop this week.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I didn't know the week started this second.
Susie, you have a comfy seat now. You and Jimmy, might as well take advantage of the comfy seat. You want a good seat?
Gonna sit here, Sam. You wanna sit up here? Yeah, I wanna sit up there.
Duh.
We'll talk about that later.
All right, moving on. Item 4, public comment.
There are none.
Okay. Presentations.
If you don't mind, we'll just have Trey and Ken go after Miss Crook. She would like to get to Vacation Bible School as
All
well,
right.
because the water park is calling her name as well. So I will turn it over to Miss Crook so she can talk
You
about
gotta
the
keep that.
leave incentive, so you guys can ask questions and have a good dialogue about this and how we got here with this leave incentive before she kicks off. I did have a couple employees say to me at the end of this past school year, it was, one of them definitely was a cook, and she said, Mr. Orville, I don't miss a day of work, and it used to be that we got $500 if we didn't miss work for a bonus incentive, whatever you wanna call that. And so it got me to thinking, you know, that's a reasonable request. I like to reward people for not missing work. If there's a way we can do it, I said, I'll look into it. And then if we can, and it looks like it's a possibility, I'll make sure we inform the board. But I don't wanna steal any thunder from Ms. Crook, cause I brought this to her attention. She worked with us at the central office. We tried to vet it through to say, okay, if worst case scenario, everybody would be having good attendance, how much would that cost monetarily? Because right now, when you have someone miss work, it's not that we're calling anybody out for missing work. It's just when you have a sub in there, it's not the same for when that person is actually there. We really do have a lot of great employees, and if they have to miss, they have to miss. I mean, life happens, it just does. So we want you to be aware of this incentive, and then ask us any questions after Ms. Crook is done with her presentation.
Okay, so like Mr. Orwell said, we had a couple of employees that came to us. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we abolished the sick leave incentive policy. And it was a tiered system that we had. And 2 years ago, House Bill 206 passed, in part of House Bill 206, teachers are eligible for a $500 incentive. Service employees are not included. You have to be a classroom teacher. So administrators aren't included in that. Counselors aren't, principals, central office staff, none of those employees. You are only eligible if you are a classroom teacher for that incentive, and you have to miss 4 or less days. Our employees who are 200 days get 15 days a year. They get 4 personal leave days that they can use for any purpose or any reason, and then 11 sick days. So out of those days, 4 or less, and you're a classroom teacher, you get a $500 incentive. So I took the historical data that we had. I went back to 2018. During that time frame, we had 224 full-time employees, and the way I graphed it is the blue are our full-time employees, how many we total have. The orange represents our professional, our gray would be our service employees, and then our yellow is how many were eligible during that year. Those employees missed 4 or less days during that school year. So and that's all employees. That's principals, central office staff, cooks, service employees, teachers. Anybody in our system is in that yellow column. So in 2018, we had a total 224 employees, and we had 51 that were eligible at that point in time. 2019, we had 213 employees, and we had 43 eligible. 2020 and 2021. 2020 was the first year that House Bill 206 came into be, and that year, even though we started with COVID, those teachers were still eligible. So during that March to June, even though we weren't in school, and you only missed, let's say you missed 4 days up to that March 13th, I think is what the date was, you were still entitled to that incentive during that time period. Now 2021 was still, again, we kind of had an off year, but again, we still had people that missed 4 or less days. So in 2020, we had 227 full-time employees, and we had 48 employees that met that 4 or less day, that mark. This past year, we had 222 full-time employees. 37 of our employees missed 4 or less days. Now, to fiscal year 2022, we currently have 234 employees that are that we have full-time employees, and I took an average of the previous 4 years to get a total of 46. That would be what our average is from the previous 4 years, looking at that historical data. So what we kind of came up with is mirroring House Bill 206 with the exception of offering it to all of our employees. So with the exception of Mr. Orville, because he's under a different contract, so it would be eligible for all of our employees with the exception of the superintendent. That would be all service, all professional, cooks, custodians, bus operators, anybody in our system who misses 4 or less days. That can be personal leave days, that can be sick days, that could be a bereavement day. Any of those days would be eligible for this leave. So again, taking with that, if we went with this, if you'll go to the next slide. Again, looking at historical data, if we took this back to 2018 and we offered those employees who missed 4 or less days $500 for only missing that time frame, we would be at approximately $29,000. Fiscal year 19, it goes down a little bit to 23, and this is with fixed costs, so that would be with Social Security and with workers' comp. Also, in fiscal year 20, we would be at the $26,000 mark, and fiscal year 21, which was this past year, we would be right around $20,000. So if we went with historical data and took an average, fiscal year 22, I would say approximately 46 people, that's what I would say our average would be, who would miss 4 or less days. We would be right at, right around $26,000. Now, to bring conservative approach, let's say approximately half of our employees. So I'm saying about 110 of our employees. Let's say that we're really gonna go after them because our kids, it matters if they're there, it matters if our teachers are there as well.
And we don't have subs.
And we wouldn't have subs. With the money that we have saved with eSurf and ARP, we have been able to move around and open up some county funds. So I'm coming to you asking for a budget adjustment of $60,000. That would be approximately 110 of our employees would get an incentive for missing 4 or less days at $500. Now, let's say we have a crazy year and all of our employees would be eligible. That's approximately $125,000. Personally, I don't foresee that happening. Once we get back into the school setting, we're gonna have germs again. We're gonna have bugs again. People just have general things come up in life. We have a lot of first-time moms, new moms. Your kids get sick going to daycare. We have, something may just come up. So I don't anticipate all of our employees getting it. But I would like to be able to offer something for our employees to help retain some teachers, give them some kind of incentive for being at work. So again, I'm coming with a conservative number of approximately 60,000. That's about half of our employees. I still think that's way more than what we would need. Probably more around the line of 30 to 35,000 would be a number, but I'm asking for 60 just to be safe. And we would have those funds available because we've moved salaries from county funds to ARP funds, so that opens up. That's just a basic budget adjustment, so we would have county funds available.
I can't imagine that that's not something that we're willing to support. Myself, I definitely am. We actually approved the incentive the same year that it had to be abolished because of budgetary issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm definitely, you
don't have to make a decision tonight.
Right.
Is there any
Okay,
sort of calculation, because if they would use all their days, and we would have to hire subs for those days, is there any calculation to show?
I haven't.
Basically, probably would always pay for itself.
I do think that it would pay for itself.
Yes.
I did not go through and look at sub cost. A sub for one day, a general sub is about $138. So if you're looking at that and somebody does use all their days, or they don't use all their days. They don't use all their days.
Right.
We would be saving. We budget approximately $200,000 just for professional subs each year. So it also goes into the fact too that whenever we're tracking those subs, we have to make sure that, like, if it's a vacancy and we never got anybody in there, that we're tracking them with a different code, so we pull that out because we don't want to include that in the sub cost, because that's a true vacancy where we may not have a teacher all year. So this is very, I didn't go in depth with it, but I do believe that if somebody didn't use all their days, we would be able to pay for it by offsetting it with sub cost.
And Mr. Rogan, you're probably aware of this, but just for everybody in the room, after 30 days, if you're a sub, you get step up for that pay. So it gets pretty expensive if that sub's in there for a long period of time. And again, we're not.
So I just think this incentive will pay for itself. In the long run, it'll pay for itself.
So is that 30 consecutive days or 30 days as a sub for the school year? Consecutive. Okay. And as far as the legislation that was passed, was that when that legislation was passed, my memory's a little fuzzy, but it seems like that they passed it, but they didn't give us the money to pay for it. The county had to come up with that money to pay for it.
Actually, the state reimburses us for that.
They did reimburse. Will they still reimburse for the teachers, the professional?
Yes, so the professional employees, we had in last year, I think I have that right here.
But I'll run interference while she's looking. But we wanted to, in the spirit of goodwill,
right?
We want to include everybody except for me, because I can negotiate my contract. So for everybody else, especially when the two people asked me were two cooks, and when they said, it'd be nice, and they weren't hateful, they weren't mad, they just were like, is it a possibility? To me, I like when people ask questions like that.
Right.
that was perfectly in line, and I appreciate them asking that question. So that brings us to today, now fast forward to this conversation.
And this one is, I'm sorry.
No, well, my thinking, before I lose my train of thought. So the yellow column you had was all eligible employees. That's professional, that's,
Yes,
okay.
that's
So,
eligibility.
so if part of those eligible, I guess my question is, out of the number that were eligible, well, so let's say 46. How many were teachers that we would get reimbursed for?
Okay, so.
And I know I'm probably putting you on the spot.
Okay, so there's two parts to my answer on this one.
Okay.
The first one is, this is in addition to what the state gives.
Okay.
So we have no option with that. And we do pay for that, and then the state reimburses us. So in fiscal year 20, in that yellow column right there, we had 25 teachers who were reimbursed from the state. They received that $500 bonus, and then we received those funds back from the state. And they pay the $500 plus the fixed cost. And it's an
So-
average of a fixed cost because of all of.
So we really got reimbursed for, if we had done all that were eligible that year, we would have been reimbursed for more than half.
Well, yes. So that 25 employees right there, they would have gotten the state with House Bill 206 in addition to this as
Okay,
well.
I see
So
what you're
that's the next one is the classroom teachers, and they have to be classified as a classroom teacher. They would get the state out of House Bill 206 in addition to our county policy. So the state will not reimburse our county policy, but they will reimburse what came out of House Bill 206.
And you can note 2018, you had the supplement, 2019 you did not. That was when it was abolished.
Well, and in 2018, the supplement was actually different. It was a tiered system in 2018,
Right.
and I think you could even use down to like 7 of your days, maybe. I don't remember off the top of my head, but these would have just been based on what I'm presenting with 4 or less days.
And the reason why I went with 4 or less is because the state, but the other reason is, I don't care what 4 days, I don't wanna get into that.
Yeah.
It's just easier
So the
for all of
difference in
us
that
at the central office to
is
keep track of 4 or less. I don't wanna get into personal versus sick and all that.
And so there's none of the tiers, it's any 4 days
Any 4
of any
days.
type of leave.
4 or less, whether you get 0 days missed or 4, you're getting paid the same. But when you hit 5, you're not eligible, because you have to find something that works, a mechanism for all that's fair. And so we just went off the state, and that way it's not arbitrary and capricious, right?
You don't want that.
Any other, these are good questions and good dialogue. We just wanted, I think you were wanting to talk, and he had
Well, no,
some
that's
train
what
of thought.
I just wanted to reiterate that it was regardless, any 4 days.
Any 4
Personal
days.
leave, any 4 days.
Okay.
Now, I will make a note. Let's say that a bus operator, sometimes it happens that they may dock their afternoon to take an extra duty run, like let's say for a football trip or something like that. Those days would not count against them because they're really not
still
absent
working.
from work. They're still working. And also jury duty days, those would not count against them.
We're trying to be reasonably fair with this, but there will be something that'll come up at some point in time. It's like, didn't think of that one, like a pandemic, you know? You just don't know. But if someone does get sick from COVID, it's like getting sick with any other virus. We can't separate that stuff out. But jury duty, the bus, that makes sense. That's an easier mechanism to say, this is fair. But anything else, if you get sick, any kind of sickness, or you get in a car accident or you need surgery, I can't help you. Or pregnancy, that's just how it works, guys. There's not, or because a lot of the people that will get punished, and I work with a lot of women in the central office, so Miss Crook can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of them said, I'll probably miss because I'm the one who always has to take care of the kids.
Right.
Am I wrong on that? You
No,
ladies said.
and that's what I said.
That's the bad side, is
Whenever-
usually the men are the ones who, they have a better opportunity at and it's just our society. But I don't want anybody to think, how did you come up with this? It was, well, we went with off-state code, we tried to look at the busing like you, and also jury duty, because nobody in this room really loves to get that letter in the mail. So, not that we don't want our civic duty here, I should watch, I'm being recorded right now.
This
We
will
love
be
our
written up
country.
into a policy.
Yes, we would need a policy. My suggestion is that we look at only 1 year to begin with, and then we look at,
Reevaluate.
at the end of the year and see if it's beneficial. I mean, even though we have the funds this year, it may not, people may say, forget it, it's not worth $500. But we are giving our teachers a little something, because I know that we've had so many that have gone across county lines, and as soon as they cross county lines, they may be getting dental and vision plus another $3,000. So at least with our classroom teachers, I mean, if they're getting the state plus this, we have a little incentive to say, hey, stay here with us because we got good kids.
Mr. Duncan, do you have anything to ask?
Will we be putting this in our policy manual if we vote to approve it?
Yes and no. There's no voting to approve anything tonight. It's just for your information. But since Trey's here, I mean, we can
Yeah, we
look
can put
at
that,
it.
yeah, we can develop a policy
Yeah.
on that, and on the point you just made, I was just sitting here thinking, as you said that, we might be able to craft some language that says that, because you said try it for 1 year or you don't give your funding, maybe we can put some language in the policy that says that policy is in effect year to year, depending on funding, because you know,
Okay.
you do your budget, you fund things in May for the
Right.
coming year,
Right.
and as long as the board funds it and puts it in the budget, then that policy would be in place, so that way you wouldn't have to always be
Okay.
Right.
repealing it or putting it back and forth. that
Your
kind of
answer,
stuff.
what I was,
Yeah.
I would think that's a good point, and I would encourage that, assuming the board decides to approve it, that you have it in a policy with that type of language, yes.
And so, let's just say we do have a bunch of teachers and staff members that buy into it, and we go over that 60,000. Where would we get additional funds to?
That's a good
pay
headache.
Well,
I like that.
It is a good headache.
It is a
Yeah, it's
good headache.
to have.
but if we are pulling in, if that would be the case, then our sub costs would not be as much as what we had originally
So we
budgeted.
could move some
So
of
we
that.
can move from our sub costs, and like I said, it's either $200,000 or $250,000 that we originally budget, or we normally budget for sub costs.
Transfer
So
to
we can
supplement.
transfer that,
Okay.
in that transfers and supplements from that account over to cover that.
Okay. I just didn't want to be scrambling at the last minute
Right.
to try to find money. To cover it.
Right, yeah,
And I
no.
know you didn't want to.
No, I don't.
I just didn't have anything else. Now, if you guys do look at new business 13B, we just put down leave incentive for employee attendance, discussion, and possible action. You do not have to act tonight, but we just put it there because we wanted you to be informed, but if you guys said, you know what, let's move forward, I'm not asking you guys to move
And I
forward.
think we should. Okay. Would it be appropriate to make a motion to have Trey to start working on that policy?
Yeah, I think you could, like, when you get down to that business item there, the new business, if you wanted to say that you wanted to, you know, approve moving forward in the development of a policy for the board to consider, and then I can get with, you know, Lauren, the superintendent, whoever else needs, and then work that policy out and get it back in front of her.
But I didn't want you to think, well, you put it there, Dave, but it's just because you don't know if you want to move forward or not. Plus, let's be honest, we're going into August here and school starts up, hopefully, fingers crossed with this variant.
I mean, to be honest, like what you just said, I would never get that award. But I would like to be able to reward those who would.
I agree. And right now, I can tell you there's two ladies who will probably say, thanks for listening, because I know they're not gonna miss unless something weird happens, because they are always at work, because they love to make sure kids get breakfast and lunch. And it's not to say other cooks don't, but I'll tell you right now, a lot of your cooks, custodians, and bus drivers don't miss because and I'm not saying teachers don't, but the difference between the service and the professional setting is not many people have a CDL to drive a bus. Everybody knows when a bus is not there. Everybody knows when a bus. So my point is, and everybody notices when food's not there. People do notice if a coach or a teacher's not there, but it's hard to run interference for those specified people that do that for a living. So, and when people ask the service side that it's there for professionals, why can't we have it? I think that's a fair, legit concern or comment. And I really appreciate these two ladies who just said, hey, Mr. Warble, you're in the building. Do you have a moment? I said, sure, and I said, put those knives down, ladies, what's going on, you know? But that's just to have fun with that, but then when they gave me their serious side of it, I thought, that is a valid point, and then that's when I asked Ms. Crook, I said, what's going on here, and then she tried to explain it, then I said, let's put a pin in this one, and we'll come back to it, and I didn't want to forget about it, and that's why we're here today with you all.
I'd say my comments are probably blowing your mind, but I definitely would
To
love
move forward?
to spend money, spend any kind of money, but I would love to be able to reward dedication like that. 'Cause
Well, when we
that's
get to
something
new
I didn't
business,
do.
maybe you guys word it how he just said to look at the policy and move forward. Okay.
Alright,
You wanna go to vacation Bible school then?
I'm going,
Okay, make a splash.
and I'll see you in August.
Cannonball,
alright,
get somebody to video it.
Yeah.
Cannonball.
Well,
See
okay.
you later.
As far as the policy update, I know we have some stuff on the agenda this evening that I was gonna be talking to you about, but just an overview, the train is still on the track. We're still moving forward. We had actually a really good meeting here in the last couple of weeks and reviewed all but one of the business and fiscal management policies. One was really, really lengthy. We didn't get into that one, but of the others, about 16 of them, I think it was, there were 8 of them that we will be in front of you this evening for that for comment, but the recommendation is going to be to repeal them. You have policies that you really don't need. And I know that that's something that you all talked about before, that if we don't need the policy or it's covered by something else, let's kind of get them off the books. So the 8 that you have on your agenda this evening are all in that category. We kind of left those grouped together. The other 8, I met with the team, and mainly Lauren was of course involved in those and her group. And we have some revisions that I'm working on, and we'll get those back in front of you. So there's another batch about that size that will come through with revisions for you guys to look at. And then there were 2 policies out of that group that are on your agenda. You'll see at the bottom of the first page. There were 2 policies in the financial packet that after we discussed it, and I kind of had my former board member hat on, I said, sometimes board members think about it this way or that way. I said, so what if you take those back to the board and just kind of put it out there and have a conversation, so we don't come back with revisions that you guys didn't really want, or maybe you may even want, you don't even want to change it, you just want to leave it as is. So as opposed to us try to second guess or anything, so those 2 at the bottom we can talk about when we get to that. But again, we've got a great thing going. We've got a lot of good teamwork going, and like I said, the train is still on the tracks, and we've got several groups you can see on your agenda this evening, and they'll just continue to be coming in batches about that size until we get them finished. So I think it's been going really well.
Yeah, I was looking through some, I saw a policy I was reading yesterday, last review, or last revised in 1974.
Yeah. So
I think this is well.
There was a lot of policy work in 1974. We do know that.
That was here in
And a lot of things have changed since then.
Sure.
So, and I think, you know, as a board members, your board members sometimes having policies on your books that you may not necessarily need. It kind of shows the public that here's what we do here, even though really what we're saying is, hey, it's really the state board. So we didn't take completely a reference out to that, because you'll see in some of the policies you get next batch that we still reference back to the state board policy that controls anyway. So why have so many policies on your books that just say, you know, look at the state board policy, or refer you to that, or try to say what's in the state board policy on your own, but then let's say that state board policy changes next year and you don't realize it, so now you've got a policy that's different. So if you don't really need the local policy on something, it's just a lot more streamlined to just reference the state board policy and just know that that's what it's going to control. And in finance stuff, it's, you know, just like you're going to do on, or you're talking about doing on this employee incentive, you can do things in addition to that are financially related, but there's so many things that you have policies on that are really control mechanisms that the state board policies are going to control anyway. So there's really no need to have a bunch of them. So you'll see 8 in the group this evening that are really in your packet, but they're all to be put out for public comment if the board approves. But all 8 of those in that financial group are all just going to be repealed.
they're just all being pulled off the books, is what that means, because you don't need those particular policies. And then I know you have a couple other groups, the old business items, and then 2 in section D. When you get to those items, I'll come back and, I'll be here, but I'll come back in the conversation with you, and we'll talk about those. So any questions on just kind of the process and where we are and what we're doing?
Just to let you guys know, your packets, I tried to make it user-friendly, so when you get to the old policy, or old business, the first 2 are there that are highlighted in pink and yellow for student and staff cell phone. And then you have the next batch that Trey sent to us, and then the last 2 are separate, that are code, what is that? 7N2, or, 8N2 and 8N4, just to let you know, because that'll flow with the agenda tonight, but Trey's here to help run interference if we have any questions.
Yeah. I think, he's got
That makes
those,
sense?
he's got those set up in order, so as we work through the agenda, they're all kind of in order for you.
And I can't wait to hire a secretary. So anyway, that's just.
I can't wait for you to.
Yeah, exactly. So that's Trey's 2 cents until we get to the rest, right? Okay.
Thank you for now.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and virtual school.
That'll be Mr. Lester. He's gonna give you an update on virtual school.
So there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes with the Southern Cooperative, Mercer, Raleigh, Greenbrier, ourselves, Fayette. And then there's some counties outside of the cooperative area that have also joined in. So what we did last year, we had 3 options. We had option 1, which was traditional brick and mortar. We had an option 2, which was more of a blended option, where our teachers essentially had students in their class, but also had students at home remoting in. And then we had option 3, which was 5 days a week, virtual, live on a bell schedule. We had facilitators that was broken down into middle, high, and grade school, and it worked out pretty well. I mean, for something that had to be developed ad hoc, short notice, everybody did a great job with it, and the test scores seem to show that synchronous is far superior to asynchronous learning. So we have some lessons learned. There are some school boards, because I've kept pretty close tabs on what other counties are doing, that, well, their decision is to go back the way it was before 2019. So they decide to go back to asynchronous West Virginia Learns. And that would be not learning from our past mistakes. So what we're doing here is we're removing the virtual responsibilities from the teachers. We're going to provide 5 days a week of live virtual instruction by certified teachers. Some of them are nationally certified. All of them have to be at least state certified. We required the bidding vendors to have a friendly platform, LMS, a learning management system. The vendor provided curriculum that aligned with West Virginia state standards. Virtual curriculum meet or exceed the virtual component of policy 2510, vendor proven history of providing quality virtual school, and limited class sizes for those virtual students. That's what was in the RFP when it went out. The 12 voting members of the SCSC, which was the old RESA 1, formed a virtual task force. We went over all the proposals. Amy Smith and myself was on the task force from this county. The RFP was sent directly to the 5 virtual school vendors that have provided in the area before. 2 local ads were placed. The task force scored and declared a bid winner. The bid winner was proximity. These were the options that proximity and the task force for the group decided that the options will be. We're only using the 5 days a week option. We're not using the 3 days a week option. But 3 days, 5 days, and K-12 4 core and 6-12 4 core and 2 electives were the requirements, and those were the options provided. We have some fixed costs, and for 5 days a week of live instruction, K through 5, 4 core only, $1,848 per year per student. We were at about $3,000 last year per semester. So by going to the cooperative, getting these other counties on board, Mercer's board is voting on this as well, Greenbrier, Raleigh, and I think Fayette. And there's the Kanawha, and there's other ones outside the area. We're forming a virtual school alliance outside of West Virginia Virtual because we've had parents, and with the feedback we're getting is it works.
The good news is, to interject here, is other superintendents have contacted us what we liked about working with this company and what didn't work. The good news is, yeah, we had to pay a little bit extra last year, but that was through using the COVID money to help out with learning loss. So it wasn't county funds, but what we did learn was, if we get more involved with this, the price goes down. And we do want to have live instruction. That asynchronistic, self-directed, I don't care who you are, that's hard to keep focused. But if you have a live teacher every day working with you, it still isn't the best for my learning. I'd rather go to brick and mortar traditional, but not everybody's traditional anymore. So that world is not there anymore. So we have to be very competitive as we look at this, because we lost a lot of kids to homeschool. This is one apparatus to try to bring them back.
We do get state funding for every one of these.
I'm gonna get into that.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
So on the K-12 plus 4 core, you'll see that the price per student is less than half than what we paid last semester for the entire year. We do have a list of electives that we can choose from, and some of the other counties are talking about what electives I'm not going to go into that quite today. I don't want to get too far in the weeds. Here's some information. Homeschool. So if a parent has a homeschool student that wants to maintain their homeschool status, but they also want to take advantage of some of the Three River Home Academy options, they can take up to 3 classes per semester and still maintain their homeschool status. We get funding at just below 0.5 FTE at that point. So they can maintain their homeschool status, and we would get funding to recoup the cost of the live virtual instruction at just about half, just below half of what it would be for a normal full-time student. SCS full-time students must maintain 60% grade point average to remain in Three Rivers Academy. So if you go below 60%, you're going to be required to come back to school because it's not working. And attendance will be mandatory. So, any questions?
We probably haven't seen results at the end of year testing from those that went through proximity, have we?
The information is technically
Still
yeah.
frozen.
We have seen it, and I can't tip my hat one way or the other, but I can tell you right now, it's good to have that data, because this year is what they're gonna call a baseline year for all of us.
Right.
There is no report card this year, but this will be the baseline for following school year. So we are looking at the data, and we'll give you a full report on it once we're allowed to
Really?
disclose it.
When do they normally allow you to disclose it?
August-ish.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, because usually the staff gets it next, and then you all will be part of that, but until they say it's not embargoed, we can't even tip one way or the other how things are going.
Understood.
But it's exciting to see data like this, because going through a pandemic, we all don't know what the data was gonna look like. We
Well,
had some ideas.
Yeah, it lets you know what you did good and what you need to improve as well.
Yep. And it still gives you a state average again and all that stuff, so we'll give you a full report.
Okay.
Is this for the, item F, approve the MOU with Southern Educational Service Cooperative?
No,
No,
Okay.
we're not
that,
done there yet. We're still in presentation.
No, I know you're still in presentation. What I'm asking you is this item F regarding your presentation.
it's all the above. Anytime yes, this is part of that, but also you all, Mr. Duncan, it's for any services that we do with ESC. That's the template for all the counties that work with Mr. Butcher and the ESC. So this would be one of those items that's a yes to. So this item or anything else we deal with them, that's just the basic template that we get an MOU with them.
We get our trained
And,
technical
when
services.
are you
from them.
when are you planning to ask us to approve or disapprove, what Mr. Lester is presenting?
Well, it's kind of, I don't know how to answer that one because I guess with the ESC agreement tonight, you don't have to approve it if you don't like it, because this is in that package, no matter what. That's the template that he's given for all 12 counties that work with them that are the old RESA 1 and 4.
And so the Three Rivers Academy, will that, do you have any data on the number of homebound students, or not homebound, but homeschooled students that this would recoup? And if we get them into this, do we get reimbursed by the state for the full amount of having a student?
Only if they're full-time.
Only if they're full, yes, they'll get a full-time if they're in the system full-time, but in this presentation, which I know is hard to see when you're on the phone, if the kids are in there a certain amount of classes, then we get a portion of that funding. So yes, we're trying to we've got phone calls, we even have literature about it. We're trying to get people back in the school system. So you're talking about 80 homeschool kids. That pretty much doubled the traditional amount in this county. Traditionally, it's been about 40. It doubled this year because of the pandemic. So Mr. Lester's been trying to work on that one to get them back in the school system. So we'll see. But now with this scare, with this variant, we're trying, yes, to get them back, because that helps us out with our funding formula. And you can see with working with the Three Rivers, we'll actually be in the black and not the red by doing it this way. I don't know how else to say it, but that's what the data shows us.
And we are willing to allow what kids to be in this virtual school and not attend school on a regular basis?
Well, it really depends on the situation. First of all, we have to know if you have access to the internet, because some people thought it meant by their phone, but you can't do this program on a phone. You have to have, well, first of all, we already provide the laptop, but that's one issue. The other issue is, do you have good connectivity? Because live streaming it live with an adult, if you have 2 or 3 kids at home getting it, that could pull down on your system. If you have one kid, that's fine, but it depends on how many people are at home pulling on the Wi-Fi connectivity, I guess. The other issue is, does that work for that kid? Because if it doesn't, and the grades go below that 60%, then they have to go back to brick and mortar. And if they don't like that, they might choose to go other places. I mean, you can go anywhere else you want now, or homeschool.
So to answer his question, any child in Summers County is eligible for it.
Yes, if they can handle it.
Right.
Well, you don't have to be in Summers County.
And you don't have to
Okay.
be in Summers County. Now, I'm not trying to pluck people off, but if they call and say, I like what you guys are offering, this is our marketing strategy. I'm not trying to take away from others, but I'm also not gonna say, I'm not gonna try.
So the one thing to keep in mind is the group of counties that went into this and formed this task force, they're going to be offering the most comprehensive virtual instruction compared to any other counties in the state. So that handful, which is what got the price down, and it did a lot of talking, and everybody's talking together and kind of sharing data, but the West Virginia Virtual, for most students, is not on par with proximity. Some students learn fine. College students do well on asynchronous. A lot of their classes are asynchronous, but these aren't college students yet. So our data shows that synchronous live classes, we also take care of that social emotional thing. We see these kids. With asynchronous, you don't. We're looking into their homes. And if a teacher sees something that's not quite right, then that can get reported. So
they're able to interact with other kids as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So
it's a
that-
classroom setting. So our kids might be in school with other county school kids, which it's fine. We don't live in that world. We are not natives. We're immigrants to that world. These kids, it makes sense to them.
Sure.
It just does.
Proximity, from the people that I talked to that their kids were on it last year, I'm gonna term it as a rigorous curriculum.
Yeah, you can't just jump in.
Right, so my question is, we're not gonna try with a certain GPA requirement before they would be considered to start with, so anyone can.
Not right now, because here's what's going on. We are in a pandemic, and as a parent, if you feel more comfortable, I'm trying to work, it's a push and pull right now in my seat, trying to get people back in a traditional setting, but I also have to understand some people are scared. And I don't know how else to make them feel better other than providing rigor, because this platform is more superior to West Virginia Virtual, and West Virginia Virtual even has admitted with the state superintendent, and I agree with the state superintendent, asynchronistic self-guided tour is not as good as a human in the classroom or a human online interacting. So that's why it's inferior, is because there's not a human watching you and say, Jackie, straighten up, or I like your answer. Greg, can you go off of that with her? It's a good, you're interacting, that's what we're seeing. And we can't necessarily see in their house, because they can black out what's in their house, but at least you can see how the kid is interacting. That's what we're talking, because I don't want to be looking into people's houses. I don't want people to get that misconception. I just want people to understand are you attending school regularly?
Ms. Farley, the mechanism of the 60% is the threshold at the end of the semester that will go into our virtual policy update that the state asked us to update. So
We're gonna do it sort of,
it's a
not at
catch-all.
the beginning, but
you will have that day in which this isn't working for you. The other thing is you're still going to have the same 3 virtual facilitators. They reached out weekly to the families, and that's what we did differently that the other counties didn't do.
But
That's
they're
what
learning from us, and I will say, I'm going to interrupt you on this because this is a comment. That's a compliment to Mr. Lester and Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Ms. Schaefer. They liked what we did. There was a lot of questions on, well, how'd you keep track of them? And we just said we just made sure they were assigned. That was an extra duty, and we did pay them. But Mr. Lester and Ms. Smith, I wanted to stack my aces in a hole to be on that committee, because they led the discussions and they told them what worked and what didn't work. So I felt like our own county was looking like the leader in this, and that's what I want Summers County to be. We don't need to always follow. It's okay to follow, but in this case, this is a whole different ballgame that we're getting into. And Mr. Lester and Ms. Smith did a great job to be on that committee, and people were asking them questions and calling us, well, what did you learn from it? And that's fine. I'd rather be on the cutting edge on this one than to go through this school year not knowing what we already know. Sorry to interrupt you, but
No.
you need to kudos, because you guys did a heck of a job.
The
this school year.
facilitators and how that function worked, all the counties were interested in how that mechanism worked. So the cooperative is hiring a person to communicate on the business end. So the part about how many seats did you fill and you vacated it before this many weeks in the semester and you get this credited back to your account and all of that, that's taken off our table. They're hiring somebody to facilitate that. That's baked into the price. But the part...
Go ahead, Mr.
I
Dyer.
have, here's what I see with this, if I summarize it. There were some students who had extremely positive experiences because of the rigor of this program last year. So that's positive. Also, another positive is the opportunity to gain additional revenue by pulling back into our system some of those students who are on homebound. And it's also something we'll have available to us if, God forbid, we have to have less students in the building again. So I can appreciate the forward thinking there. One concern I have on this is I'm not sure exactly how to address this, but I do know this is very rigorous. And if students who may look at this and say, oh, well, I'm going to stay home and do this, some of these students will be set up for failure because this is rigorous, this is demanding, and it's not going to be for everybody. And because it's not, my question is, I'm wondering if from the get-go there should not be, there at least has to be some serious communication with students, and that's one. And two, I'm wondering if there doesn't need to be some GPA consideration with this as far as getting in it, because the rigor will be so demanding, and if students just jump into it just because they want to stay at home and do it, then they're going to really get behind because they have to come out of it and they have to go back to bricks and mortar. That's my point.
Okay. And we're working on that, Mr. Duncan, with virtual policies with the state and our own, so it's a sliding scale right now. So those are all valid points that we're working through ourselves. We will figure out this eventually because the last 10 years, we haven't been doing this, but these companies have. That's the difference maker right there. We just haven't caught up to it, but we're sure catching up as quickly as we possibly can right now.
Okay.
I feel like a freshman trying to play varsity basketball. There's freshman speed and then there's varsity speed, and we're trying to catch up to it. I'm practicing, they're on game speed.
Yeah, I really want for us to be aware of the potential for students getting into this who just from the get-go shouldn't be in it, and then it puts them further behind when they have to go back into the regular classroom at the bricks and mortar schools.
Between Mr. Lester, Miss Smith, Mr. Smith, and Miss Schaefer, that's a disclaimer they say right away. This is not easy, and we don't try to chase them away, but we also want to lure them in. It's a push and pull. You know, that's the issue, but those are all the things that we let people know when we're talking with them, because anybody that's done it, they say the same thing you do, Mr. Duncan. It wasn't easy, but it was a little bit better than just sitting and going through it by myself. That's the difference maker.
Well, the West Virginia option that some students were in, that was just that's a train wreck for many students.
It's the Florida virtual, is what it is.
So anyway,
yeah.
That's all the comment I have on this then. So that's it.
Mr. Lester, anything else?
Yeah, I think the not letting someone continue if they're failing, there will be a 60% review at the end of the semester. But going into this particular year, under the particular, we're not sure of what's going to happen, and to make sure that we give people that would choose to homeschool and still not get that curriculum, but they can choose that homeschool if they don't have a particular GPA. I think we...
See, I'm sorry, Mr. Lester, I interrupt you. I apologize.
No, you're fine. I agree 100% with you. Going into this semester, there might be some advantages to giving people a chance to succeed that may not have the current GPA, but going forward, I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
Well, I would come back then to one point, and I apologize for doing this. I think if there is a potential for making a determination that student or students have to come out of and go back to bricks and mortar, I think that determination should come sooner than after 18 weeks of school at the end of the semester.
So would 9 weeks review of that make it?
They're not going to get that low, Mr. Duncan, because you have 3 facilitators with their eyes on that weekly. Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Ms. Schaefer, I can tell you already, if it gets to that point, they get a hold of our directors to put the heavy hand to it. Those 3 facilitators are working with them weekly. I would think if it's getting to a red flag, you call the parents in and have that conversation. Say, guys, unless you change, I think you need to move to the brick and mortar. That's what you have those 3 working on that weekly. Don't they check every Friday?
Well, so there's a weekly check-in.
Yeah.
Now, but...
And so what you're saying to me is then with all of this eyes on the process,
yeah,
that we would determine this inability to cope with this sooner than later, and it could happen 3 weeks into the school year. It could happen 4 weeks or 5 weeks. In other words, as soon as we see that they aren't coping, then they would be told, hey, you're going to have to do this by such and such a date. If not, you're going back to bricks and mortar.
Well, yeah, we have more teeth to add. We got money from the state Mr. Lester worked on to get a PO. That's a parole officer with truancy. So if you're not doing the work, you're truant. It's an attendance matter. That'll be documented, and when that gets in front of the court, all of a sudden I'm gonna let the parents answer that question. And then they're gonna say, go back to school. I mean, that's what's true. Yeah, that's what we're trying to add a little bit of teeth to it with multiple fail safe. Sorry, I can't talk. I better just shut up.
Well, but it can be more than just being absent without leave. It can be the inability to function and do that work.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
think, okay, all right,
So,
I'm finished.
So would a 9-week review
later.
in our policy be?
We're doing it weekly already.
Okay.
You gotta be careful when you put stuff in policy and we don't follow it, you're gonna get yourself in trouble. And I don't mean, sometimes we over politicize. Is that a word? Is that a good word?
We know what you mean.
I call it administrative guidelines maybe, because really if you got weekly checkup, plus the teacher who's from proximity is going to tell us, we've had them contact us and say, these parents are not listening. Now that we have a PO,
yeah,
we can work on multiple angles is what I'm saying.
Our attendance situation is part of our problem. The pandemic added to it. But just like today, I denied my first driver enrollment verification. Too many days unexcused. We have to change our ways we look at this. So when you're over your 10 days, you're truant. At 5 days, you're supposed to get a letter. 10 days you're truant. So at the 5-day mark, after 5 days of unexcused absences, the probation officer that the state is going to pay half of them for, we only had to pay half of the salary. They're going to take on those students. They're also going to be sitting in the high school with those students. And so before it even gets to court, they're going to have to deal with a probation officer coming to their house and saying, hey, you're at 5 days, this isn't working. And it's going to work for virtual home students as well as brick and mortar students. So there are many levels to this. You also have your community and schools people like Miss Hudson. So you may have somebody that's went into alternative school. Part of that may be that you have to meet with Miss Hudson weekly to check up what's working, what's not working. So there are so many levels right now that's going to change. You're going to hear squawking from maybe parents where they're not used to this attendance being kind of, yeah. I mean, just like Superintendent Warville says, you can print all the signs, the banners, the pencils, and the bookmarks, and the whatever bumper stickers, but that doesn't mean attendance matters.
Yeah.
Attendance matters when, just like today, I want that person to be able to get their driver's enrollment verification, but no. Just like you're not going to be able to keep your parking permit after you have your truant for the high school. It's all going to be baked in. It will be a little bit of shock at first.
One suggestion, and I don't know if it's even possible or not, but I would like to see the SCSC possibly negotiate with proximity. I know we already have our numbers or what it's going to cost, but have an open house for prospective families that want to use that. Because I remember last year the unknown was nobody knew what to expect with proximity.
So maybe we should host our own for
we
Three
could
Rivers.
do that as long as proximity has a platform open that parents could look at,
right?
And even have
instead of explaining it, they can touch it, see
they
it.
can see it in action.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
That's good.
Just a suggestion.
Or a tutorial on our website. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think we beat this horse now.
I like to do that though.
And
It's
we
been
we
like
did
that for a while.
we did virtual live right now. Oh yeah. Okay. I'll give it back to you, Ms. Farrell. We're done with our presentation.
All right. Moving on, item 6, approval of minutes. We have the minutes for July 8th and July 15th.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes for July 8th, 2021 and July 15th, 2021.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes for July 8th and July 15th, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining. Let the minutes reflect that by a 5-0 vote, we have approved the minutes. Item number 7, student success stories.
We don't have any right now for that or instructional initiatives, so if you'd like to just move down to approval of bills, we've already done the other.
All right, skipping on down, we have approval of bills.
The only one I had in there was safe and sound. I don't know if I highlighted yours, but that was the only one I saw, Mr. Rogan.
Okay, I make a motion we pull safe and sound out and do it separately.
I'll second.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by me, seconded by Mr. Angel. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. I looked at the bills online. I didn't see any for James and Law or McGraw-Hill. Is that correct?
There are none that I see.
No, the only one I saw was one board member, and that was safe and sound.
Okay, do we have any opposed or abstaining? So by a 5-0 vote, pulling that out separate, passed. Okay. Do we have any questions about the bills?
I move that we approve the paying of the bills other than safe and sound.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining.
That's what,
I move that
that's all
we
but safe and sound.
vote to pay the Safe and Sound bill.
I'll second.
Okay, wait. Your motion, was your motion to approve all but safe and sound?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
all right.
I was like you, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, so, all in favor, let's revisit that. All in favor of voting to pay all but safe and sound, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstaining.
Okay.
All right. Let the minutes reflect by a 5-0 vote, all bills but safe and sound have been paid. I make a motion, we pay safe and sound.
Second.
Second.
Okay, have a motion by me, second that one by Stan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstaining.
Aye.
Okay. Let the minutes reflect by a 4-0 vote with one abstention being Mr. Brogan, that safe and sound has been approved to be paid. Transfers and supplements. I believe
We don't have any, no.
All right, item number 12, old business.
That's the pink and yellow that was highlighted for staff and student cell phone policies.
All right. Do we have any further discussion on these?
Let's do them one at a time.
Okay. All right, first let's take item 4-H-20, staff use of cell phones and electronic signaling devices.
I'll make a motion, we approve that policy.
Okay, have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining. Let the minutes reflect by a 5-0 vote, that policy has been approved. Okay, policy number 7-A-11, student use of cell phones and electronic signaling devices in schools.
I would like to make the motion that we leave that on review
Second.
and, well, let's go ahead and vote and then I'll say a little bit more.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Do you want to have the discussion now before we vote?
Yeah, that's fine.
What is the, what's the basis for leaving that on review?
I just cannot support, having a school level administrator allow cell phone use on a bus.
Me neither.
I think they should be allowed to use the cell phone on a bus until they break certain rules that we need to set. That's my opinion.
Well, state policy on bus operators in charge of the bus and everybody on the bus. So that bus operator is the one that should make the decision, in my opinion.
But if the principal says it's okay, isn't that what you're saying?
You know, the bus driver needs to say it's okay. Because that's what the law says.
But what I'm saying is the bus driver reports to the principal. If the principal says to you as a bus driver, you can use a cell phone, that's their call to say, if you want them to use it, fine. If you don't want to use it.
We're talking about the students, right?
Right. That's what I'm saying. The principal can say to the bus driver, I'll use Jimmy. Jimmy, your rules apply on the bus. If you want them to use the cell phone, fine. If you don't, I'm not gonna tell you they can or can't. If you wanna use them, the only time an administrator can tell Jimmy that kid can't use the cell phone could be he got in trouble, especially if he's always in trouble on the bus. You can say, then don't let him use the bus. Or use his phone on the bus, excuse me. That's what that, and isn't that what that intended from a lawyer's point of view?
And I think we could end up with,
Or what are you guys talking about? I'm trying to figure out
Well,
what.
so, when it comes to cell phone usage, I've made this statement many times. I have more in common with my parents than I do my kids, because I grew up in a
I agree
time
with
with
you.
more, so.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I went on a bus trip recently, and, you know, I was kind of thinking, I like the no use of cell phones because it prevents kids from getting into trouble. I get that. But yet, on this trip, coming back, 3-hour trip, I never heard anything out of the kids on the bus because they were listening to music on their phones, or they were texting with their, you know, their friends, or.
And they still can. With this policy, they still can.
So I guess that's my, I
I
interpret
just
it a
think
little
we could
differently.
possibly, you can help me here.
And
We
maybe
could possibly
try to-
end up with bus drivers or school administrators, some will, some won't, and I just think we need to let them use the phone on the bus unless they break certain rules with the phones.
Well, that's what,
Here's how I
that's
do
what this
mine,
is.
and I may be stepping out of the rules. If a phone comes out and I see it and they don't have earphones in, they're playing music, they're taking pictures, the phone's mine. I'll bring it to Susie, bring it to Mr. Hudgens, whoever.
Yeah.
But as long as they have their headphones in and they're sitting there, I'm good with it. But when
So-
it comes
yeah.
above the seat, if I see a flash, phone becomes mine.
Oh,
Oh, that should be an absolute no tolerance there. If the flash goes off, you're done.
Well, I agree. I guess what we're hung up on here is we're really getting the weeds. As a building principal, I'm in charge and my name's attached to every one of those kids and those bus drivers. If Jimmy says, I want you guys to do X, Y, and Z on the bus, and it really doesn't infringe on anybody's civil rights, we're good. Does that make sense? So you can use your cell phones on the bus as long as the bus driver doesn't have a problem with the way they're using it.
The way
I don't know what I'm seeing the difference here, so help me understand.
C3, okay, for prohibition and disciplinary action.
Yeah.
So C3, the way I read that means if we're going on a bus trip, Jimmy's taking me on a field trip.
Yeah.
If whoever my chaperone is doesn't secure school level administrative permission for me to use the phone, then it's not permissible. That's the way I interpret it. But the way you're explaining it is different than what I'm interpreting.
Yeah,
that's
because,
what I want. That's all I want.
because if I'm not
Mr.
there,
Berger.
it's in
Unread it.
loco parentis, so whoever's in
Trying to
charge
finish 3.
will be the one who will say, can you use the phone or not? So if I'm the building principal, I'm gonna tell my bus drivers, use, is it 43? I always get confused with the policy. What's that with bus drivers?
4336.
Yeah, I was on right.
43,
Okay,
36.
then you apply 4336, which would fall in place here. He's in charge now, not the administrator, but the administrator has the authority to tell the bus driver to say, look, Jay has been in trouble with the phone.
Right.
He is not to use it on the school property, and that's the bus. That helps give him credence to say, we're in this together. And what I'm saying is, the bus driver is always in charge. Even if the principal's not there or a coach, the bus driver's always in charge of the bus at that point in time. They have jurisdiction over that bus. Nobody's saying they
May I
can't.
enter-
Nobody's
Yeah,
saying,
may I
no,
enter-
wait a minute, Mr. Duncan, nobody's saying that the bus driver isn't in charge. It's just saying that if the kids wanna use a cell phone, I agree, I'd rather them on the phone, quiet, with their headset or play. It's a lot easier on all of us, because if all those kids don't have cell phones, that's when you and I agree how it used to be.
Yeah, screaming and yelling. And
Well, or whatever, but I don't want people to think the bus driver's not in charge. The reason why it was struck out was the school principal needs to be in charge of, is the authority figure, and it helps the bus driver then when they're gone saying, your principal said you can't use that phone, because Miss Hudson can tell you with discipline, she's gonna follow through with it with these bus drivers to support Jimmy's out there. That's what the intention, because 4336, you have to abide by it. That's just the law, the policy says. Okay, Mr. Duncan.
Would it,
Thank you.
would this work and solve the issue for all parties if the policy was reworded to say that bus drivers have authority to allow or disallow student or students to use a bus.
Yeah, we already have that
And,
authority.
wait a minute, I'm not finished. If it would say the bus driver has the authority to allow or disallow cell phone usage on his
It already says that in policy. 4336.
Yeah, you go by 4336.
What was the question? I missed it.
He was wanting to know is, should we reword the policy? Basically, the policy, rewording he suggested was that it was up to the bus driver.
No, I wasn't finished.
Okay.
If the policy is reworded to say the bus driver has the authority to allow or disallow phone usage on his bus, but also he is countermanded if the principal says, Johnny Jones is on your bus for this trip, he's been in trouble with his cell phone, doesn't matter where you're going, what field trip or whatever, he will be disallowed from using. That way, both the principal has oversight and the bus driver has oversight. So will that satisfy all parties if it's worded to say that? The bus driver has the authority to allow or disallow cell phone usage on his bus, subject to a principal saying, no, that student can't use it because they have violated or they've lost their privileges. Would that not solve the problem and make everybody, would that satisfy everything?
I just feel like
How did it get
the,
struck out?
I just feel like the student needs to be able to use the phone, period, unless they do something wrong with it.
Well, I
That's
agree.
just my opinion.
I agree with that.
But that's
How
supposed
did
to
it-
allow for that, I think.
But it allows for that. Nobody's saying they can't, because the first sentence says, number one says, under no circumstance shall the use of such devices by students interfere with instruction or safety. So if you're on the bus and you interfere with safety,
Absolutely.
that's a problem.
Right, I agree with that.
So then they can use it on the bus if there's not a safety issue.
See, and my thing was with 3, it says unless permission is secured from the school level administrator. So my thinking is maybe you've got someone who goes the football players. They're routinely going on to football games on buses.
Yeah.
So he knows I've got to check with the school level administrator to see if my kid, to get permission for my kids. You've got someone else who maybe goes on one field trip a year and they don't realize it. They get on the bus, they haven't secured that. But
Oh, I
so
see
it's
what you're
just
saying.
it's just a technicality.
How did that
I'm
get
thinking.
struck out? Because Trey brought that question.
Well, that's why I was just wondering, because just looking.
Do you know how it got struck out?
Can I speak to the question?
I don't know. Keep it 2 seconds, maybe.
I've heard that before.
Okay.
The pros and cons is you go on a trip, whether it be sports or not, I'm not saying just sports, and you need to call your parents because you're almost back, or you're on the trip and you're minding your own business, listening to whatever music you like. I mean, it benefits everyone, but at the same time, the risk, and Mr. Farley mentioned this, is if you're filming other kids, there's where so
That goes back to safety.
yeah.
Number one,
I mean, when you're filming other kids, whether it may be doing something that is inappropriate, but nevertheless, then it gets out. Then you got people filming stuff, and you know how kids get when they're in a group. It feeds on itself. So
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Let them use the phone unless they do these things that are wrong.
But that's what this policy says.
Well,
I don't read it that way, but if that's what it says,
I get what you're saying. I understand. I hear you. I just don't know how it got struck out from bus drivers. But at the end of the day, ultimately, if Mr. Farley's the bus driver on that bus route, whether it's curricular or extracurricular, that guy's in charge according to 4336. End of story. And it goes back to number one, safety. I don't know how else to put it, so that's where we're at, but.
Well, I'm just looking at the history, when this was first drafted and put out for review the first time, I'm pretty sure when it went out for review, but it said bus operators, and then it was changed. So it was changed to school level administrator, and my recollection of that conversation, and I'm not any more clear than you all, because, you know, but there was a discussion about the responsibility, kind of, was that too much responsibility to put on the bus operator to have to make that decision?
Well,
And
No,
that's how.
They assume it every day.
That's exactly right,
He's
but
got
I'm saying I'm just trying to remember how we got to that, because originally it was drafted, it was with bus operator, and then when it was put out for review, and we had the last discussion, it was changed to school level administrator, but I hear what you're saying, and I agree, that is what the law says. I mean, you know, the teacher is in that parental role, but when on the bus operator's in that parental role, and that is their responsibility, so, maybe what Mr. Duncan said, you know, the bus operator has the authority that they have, but in any instance, you know, a school administrator, if there's a disciplinary issue, you know, can enforce that restriction, you know, over and above what's going on. I mean, a school administrator might have some sort of punishment that's issued that takes a student out of the classroom and puts them in ISS or something like that. So I think maybe if we could, it sounds to me like, you know, as a first line, you're saying the bus operator, at least those who brought it up, are saying that the bus operator should remain in control of that bus, like that's their authority to begin with. And then it seems like the concern would be that where does the school level administrator fit in? And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, that everybody would be satisfied that the bus operator has that first line of authority unless the school level administrator, for some justified reason, you know, directs to the contrary or something like that. Does that sound like what, I think that's
That
what
sounds
Mr. Duncan
great.
was saying
And, you know,
too.
Go ahead, Jackie.
This is
What I was gonna say
Ladies
is
first.
that I think that, to a degree, common sense is gonna have to just come into play. I don't know that you can necessarily write that in the policy, but bus drivers always are having, you know, communication with the school administrators,
Sure.
with the different teachers. A lot of times, you know, they will know if there's a problem. So
Could we put and or?
so I'm wondering
Is
if
it okay to put that?
that's,
Like, but from the school bus operator and or school level administrator?
Point of order here. Could someone, we have a motion in the second on the floor, do we not?
we do.
And now we're in the
Could you read
discussion.
that motion in second? Could you read that motion again?
The motion was that the student use of cell phones, electronic signaling devices in schools remain on review.
Okay, so we have a motion in the second. We've been in discussion. What I would interject here is that we all want to come out of this with everybody being unified and satisfied that we've done this the right thing. And I think that's very important. We need to have a unified front on this, on all policies, and we especially need a unified front on this policy. So there's a motion on the floor that this remain on review. I think let it remain on review gives us all the time to look at this a little more closely, and for anybody to bring up any different wording they'd like to see in order to make everyone feel more comfortable with it. So therefore, I would call for a vote on the question at this time, because personally I'm thinking we should leave it on review and we should all deliberate on this, and then I'll make another motion. We'll leave it under review. So that's I call for a vote on the question.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Now,
Abstaining.
okay.
Okay.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Marone, but I think since we talked about this subject here, is it appropriate if we leave it on review, Mr. Warbles, that means it'll still be under review and you'll have it at the very next time we meet, have it on there so we could take action on it.
Well, it'll be under old business, And yes, you can do the same thing just like you did tonight.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And I just think that'll allow us all, because, again, we want to have a unified front on this. This can be, in my experience, this can be a very contentious issue, and we want to make sure that all of us at this table, we feel comfortable with the bus drivers, and all the board members and people in central office and our principals. So I think that will work better for us going forward.
Principal
Okay.
has the authority to make the decision.
Thank you.
It was
Okay,
like-
thank you.
I would agree with
I don't
that.
think they took it in.
Okay,
I'm coming up, the principal comes out and said, hey.
moving to
John,
item
any
number
trouble, you know,
13,
they use it, they looked at it as.
New business.
Take over.
approved purchases over 20,000.
You don't have any?
Okay. Item B, leave incentive for employee attendance, discussion, and possible action.
I would move that we instruct Mr. Morone to get on, drawing that up for us.
I like that. There you go. Get on, I'm gonna draw up it. I'll just say you made a motion. I'm writing that down. Draw a policy. I like that, yeah. Draw it up.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
All right, so I have a motion on the floor to instruct Mr. Morone to go ahead and begin creating the policy
Slash draw it up.
slash draw it up, for, leave incentive.
Okay.
Do I have any further discussion on this?
So that means you'll draw up a policy, it'll be a policy comes up for us, put out on review, and then we'll vote on it.
Right, it'll come back for you first, yeah, to let you take a look at it, then same process we've been going through. If you like it, then put it out on review for comment and so on, yes.
I have no further discussion.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining. Let the minutes reflect that by a 5-0 vote, Mr. Morone has been instructed to write it. All right, item, let's see, 13C. Approve the review of policy revisions and considerations for public comment for policy 8A, Fiscal Administration, 8C1, levy deadline and schedule, 8C2, budget preparation and adoption procedures, 8C5, line code transfer and authority, 8F2, financial reports and statements, 8F3, audits, 8J1, bonded employees, and 8O, equipment and supplies management inventory control.
And we're being asked to agree to put these out on review, correct?
Yes.
I would move this board approve item 13C to approve placing those policies previously read on review for the public.
I will second that. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstaining. Let the minutes reflect that by a 5-0 vote, those policies in 13C can be placed on review. 13D, discussion of possible policy revisions for 8N2, vendor preferences, and 8N4, fiscal administration.
Those are the two sheets in the back of the thick policies that you just said put on review, so just want to direct you to those two policies, and did you want to give them an update on that?
Yes,
Okay.
these were the two policies I mentioned earlier out of the fiscal and business management section. We reviewed the whole bulk of them. You've got about half of them on your agenda tonight. These were the two that we did not put together yet to put in front of the board, because when we started discussing those, we felt like there was a need to get some input from the board, because, you know, we don't want to draft up a policy that or actually recommend the repealing of a policy that the board wants to keep. It's kind of, you know, waste of everybody's time and energy. So let's start with 8N2. That's the policy on vendor preference. And, you know, if you, as Summers County Board of Education wishes to have a vendor preference policy, I don't see, this one was adopted in 2002. Certainly permissible to have one. And your guidelines on what you do with respect to that policy are outlined there. But when we started looking at this on whether or not it should be revised, or does the board even want to have a policy? If it's not, you're not required to, but you are permitted to. We just thought before we kind of tinkered with that one or recommended anything with it at all, it would be best just to come in front of the board and see if you would like for, do you want that to be changed at all? Do you want us to look at any revisions on that? Or do you want to leave it as is? Do you want to repeal it? Not that you'd be voting on that tonight, but we'd just like a little bit of just discussion, just to kind of get an idea of what the board's thoughts are about having a vendor preference policy. And basically, you can see there's just criteria there that, you can provide a preference for resident vendors who have resided in West Virginia for 4 or more years, vendors with at least 75% of their employees residing in West Virginia, or non-resident vendors if they maintain a headquarters in West Virginia and employ at least 100 West Virginia residents. So, let me be clear, if you want a vendor preference policy, we will go back to our next meeting and we will make sure that everything in that policy is permissible. If you don't want a vendor preference policy, then we would just put it in front of you for repeal. And those are, vendor preference policies are, sometimes they.
I am a local business, so I at first thought, I really like this, but with the money that we have in hand right now that we're going to be spending over the next 3 years, as long as what I'm reading here, as long as it's within 2.5% of millions of dollars that we'll be potentially spending, that's a lot of money. I don't know. That's a tough one.
That's why you don't have to make a decision like that, think about it.
So explain the last sentence to me and make sure I'm understanding. If the Director of Purchasing determines that competition for a particular good is eliminated as a result of this policy, the preference shall be removed. What is, in lieu of this policy, what does that last sentence mean?
Okay, if the Director of Purchasing determines that competition for a particular good is eliminated as a result of this policy, the preference will be removed. It's a good question. Let me look at we didn't really get, honestly, we didn't get really deep into the details of your policy, because when the question came up of whether we needed to even have one, I said, that's probably something we need to ask the board before we.
Well, now my question would be, and Lauren's not here, but is this a policy that is referenced often?
Well, the reason why this comes up is because you do have a situation where, like, the state of West Virginia goes by the policy of saying we'd like to go ahead with people from West Virginia. So then the question becomes, you have local people who you like to patronize, because like you just said, local business. So what we were thinking is, I'm not gonna tell you guys what you should and shouldn't do. What I'm saying is you can make on your sheet to say, I prefer around here. And basically what I'm saying, versus, okay, you give me a good price, you give me a good price, you're from here, you're not, you say, we'll go with the person closer if it's equal. You can do that, because it's not anything illegal or unethical, because the state already does that now. So we're just following state code on that. So I get what he's saying though too, because when you're dealing with millions of dollars, the percents could be, catastrophic if you don't watch what you're doing.
So Mr. Marone, is it legal to say?
Let me say, this is for discussion. We can't, this is a fact-finding thing. So I would say, I move that we table this discussion until the next regular board meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And let me, just for clarification, if I could ask, because again, when this conversation started, we didn't really drill down into the details of the policy. It was really more of a surface question. Does this board want a vendor preference policy or not? So when you do put it back on, when it comes back on your agenda for discussion, we'll have looked at it a little bit closer.
No, that's okay.
And
I
the
didn't mean
answer
to put
was-
you on the spot.
No, I was actually reading that too, and that's a really good point, that if it's hard to understand, when you're sitting here reading it, which I agree, I think and I was looking at some of the other language in there, and I
Well,
think
like
it's a little bit confusing.
if you're not, like, if you use our virtual policy, if you don't teach live, that's our good that's eliminated. So as a result, the preference will be removed, so you're gone. You're off the tables, how I read that, but you're an attorney.
Well,
I
it
might
says
be
if
interpreting-
competition is eliminated, if the competition's eliminated as a result of this policy, the preference will be removed. I'm not sure what the
Preference of the
drafter was
local
thought in
guy.
2002.
So essentially, if you only have one local vendor
Yeah, the
getting a
preference is removed, but
preference,
the preference only says
then you would
that
remove the
you
competition,
still,
in theory.
you
Well-
still made your bid. The issue
I'm
is,
thinking
how are we
like
gonna
that.
evaluate
I
bids
teach
here?
live, you teach
On vendor preference,
asynchronous.
we're gonna
I'm
evaluate these
removing
bids, and
you
even though your
from the
bid's a little bit
competition,
higher,
'cause you're
we're gonna
not
give
the
it to
one
you
asking.
because you have a
So,
vendor, you have a local preference.
This
you have a
proposed
local
scenario
preference.
that I was
But
wondering
if
if was
that's
legal
removed, I don't
is
understand why that's
can
in
Summers
there.
County
I don't
Schools
know why it's in there.
give
Well, let the
2%?
minutes, let the minutes
Yes.
reflect that by a 5-0 vote,
You said table it.
that has been tabled.
Yeah.
So we have to stop calling.
Go to fiscal administration, wait a
All
minute,
right.
control it, chair. I like it.
All right,
Good job, Jackie.
fiscal administration.
This policy 8N4, the reason we didn't put this back in front of you yet, because there was a suggestion or discussion about changing an amount that is in 3.1.3. And I know that, I guess your policy said 5,000, and then maybe recently, I don't have the,
We bumped it to 20.
yeah, I don't have the updated version for it, but everybody should have that marked through it. It's 20,000, and 3.1.3 is what your current version is. So the question was whether to put under the board a policy revising that number further. And I again thought, just because that I sometimes, which is good in policy review, that I think about when I was on a board, how would I perceive that? And I said, I really think that's something we ought to probably, test the water with the board on before we put a policy in front of them. I know there's a lot of hesitancy when those numbers are in front of board members on, how much, how many purchase orders, what amounts do you have to approve before you have any authority to do things? It does limit, and these are the expressions that I hear from, from your finance director and your superintendent. It does limit their ability to carry on business a little bit more efficiently.
Even at
and-
20,000?
even at 20 is that's what I'm told. So what I wanted to say, just as kind of throwing into the the pot for consideration, is you have full control of your budget as a board. And if we say we're going to spend, $150,000 in this particular line item, superintendent can't exceed that without your permission. So this is really not about you're going to spend more money than we've said you could spend in a particular line item. It's about in what increments are we going to let you kind of just, go ahead with business, as opposed to having to stop and come and get approval from the board. So it's a balancing act. And, whether it's $100,000, some counties have 100, some have less. So it's really, it's something, before I just didn't know if it was the best idea just to put a number in there. If the board is happy where they are, there's no reason for us to put something back in front of you. If you would consider, if the board is interested in considering a revision to that number, and you want to discuss that, you would be voting on it tonight, but just some guidance is really kind of what we're looking for there.
Well, let me say this. This policy that we're referencing here was written by a Bowles Rice attorney. And we have gone from the 5,000 threshold, and we approved that up to 20,000. The policy's been written, and we can certainly look at it. So again, I move that this board table further discussion on 8-N-4 Fiscal Administration until the next regular meeting.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Let the minutes reflect that by a 5-0 vote, that has been tabled until the next meeting. All right. Item E, policies to remain on review as new policies to be adopted.
I move this board approve all the items under E, and if you want to read through them, Ms. Farley, go ahead, but I move we approve for them to remain on review.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained. All right, by a 5-0 vote, those policies have been, will remain on review. Do you need me to read through them, or since they're on the agenda, are we good?
They've been properly posted. You don't really have to read through them, I don't think.
Okay. All right. Item F, approve MOU with Southern Educational Service Cooperative.
So you guys have a handout of that, and what we do, and this is boilerplate with RESA as well as now the ESC, but basically you can see that if we work with them, there could be administrative fee of 5%. But he has done this with all the counties, so we're not getting any different deal than the rest of the counties. I can tell you though, he could raise that up if it's outside our ESC. So if you're outside the 12 counties, you know how we meet with them, then he could bump that up if he would like to do that. But at this point in time, it's for one fiscal school year. It's boilerplate working with the ESC. We've been working with them with the proximity, and you know, we're getting a pretty good deal now by working with a consortium, if you will.
So was there a fee, administrative fee, when the RESAs were in place?
Oh, yeah, because when I was RESA director, yeah.
How does this compare to that fee?
It's gone up a couple percentage points, because here's why. These are they're not nonprofit anymore. They have to be for-profit because of when you got rid of the RESAs, they aren't funded anymore, and so he has to make some money or it won't be solvent anymore. The small counties benefit from this more than the big fish, like Raleigh, Fayette, Mercer. They really don't need the ESC, but they stay in it to help the small fish out. Let's just use it at that.
We benefit from
Yeah.
being part of their big number.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
You know those big whales and sharks and those little fish are? That's what we are doing, the little fish hanging out.
Hanging off of them.
Yes, we are.
We're clover.
Yeah, but that's okay.
We're the remorse.
Yeah.
Piece of rubble.
We are not a Spanish mackerel. Is that what you? Hope that makes sense what you guys are approving for an MOU.
I'll make a motion, we approve the MOU with Southern Educational Service Cooperative.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Greg, seconded by Kenny. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Let the minutes reflect that by a 5-0 vote, we have approved the MOU with the Southern Educational Service Cooperative. Item G, approved pre-K calendar for 21-22 school year.
This is also boilerplate material. You have to do this every year as a board. You have to approve the pre-K calendar for each school year. You can see on August 23rd through the 26th, home visits and room prep. I will say that we're gonna try to do this more with all the elementary classes because we haven't seen our kids much. And so we're gonna try to make this more pervasive throughout the whole county eventually, K through 12. It just helps out, let everybody know we care about their kids and we're ready to take you back. And hopefully there's less tears, not for the kids, but for the parents. a lot of parents like, oh, my baby's going off, you know, you get it, you know what I'm saying? So, basically, this is their school year. You can see it starts a little bit differently because they are pre-K, but we wanted you to see basically their school year because every year at this time, you have to approve the calendar.
I'll make the motion that we approve the pre-K calendar for 21-22 school year.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? All in favor of approving the pre-K calendar for 2021-22, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining. Let the minutes reflect that by a 5-0 vote, that calendar has been approved. Item H, approve surplus auction bids.
I will yield this to Mr. Lester, but before I do that, I do want to thank him and Mr. Boone and all the people that helped out making sure this was a successful auction. We sold some buses, we sold a car, and I'm just gonna say we sold a bunch of stuff. Whether you call it junk or not, it's gonna get out of here, and we got some money for it. And so that money that we take in, transportation will get their pot for transportation, and then the rest will go towards the central office to help with, well, it's just in the general budget for whatever, right? So it's going back in the hopper, but we need to be full disclosure and transparent of what took place. Ken's gonna give you an overview, and if you have any specific questions, this guy ran around like a madman last week, and he was doing multiple work in the pole barn as his office online while helping people and doing customer service. I do say if Ken ever retires, Walmart would need a greeter like him. He is very good at what he does. Now, he might not like that, but he even sold a big old handbill or two. And I felt like Looney Tunes when I saw that
Those things
handbill.
are big bucks.
But it actually went for a lot more than I thought it would. So I was just glad that we had people bid on the items, and it was full disclosure, and we didn't really have anybody disgruntled or upset. But Mr. Lester, I think will give you a quick report on how it went.
Were all of our minimums met?
all of the minimum bids? No.
So we have some items that didn't sell.
Right. And if, and we have contacted second highest and so forth. And the way the surplus section of the bids went is you put in your maximum, but the winning bid is $5 over the second highest bid. So that's how a silent auction would normally work. Because if you didn't do that, why would you put in a maximum bid and then it automatically go run up to the maximum bid? So we did this, very by the book, and but we made $16,134 on 4 buses, and $6,780 on our surplus equipment that was in the building.
All the buses were at a minimum of $2,000, right? So if you look at that, the buses really did well. Surplus did fine. I mean,
well, so almost, I'd say 80% of the items have been picked up. We have a few more to be picked up, so not all the money has been received because they haven't picked it up yet. And we're going to have another sale because we have a middle school building, and there's stuff that needs to go.
What if we didn't approve the bids? What if we didn't approve the bids?
I don't know. I didn't know you were approving the bids.
and no, I'm still gonna try to get 3 out of you to say yes.
If,
'cause we want it
if
out.
you guys want to show up and take the stuff,
I
then
don't want more. We actually need to get that pole barn renovated.
the football team helped out today. We had a lot of big equipment, and they helped.
They did a good job.
They did a
Kids
good.
helped out.
They came down today while I was down there because I couldn't have helped by myself, and but we moved a lot of big equipment. A lot of stuff we got really good bids for, and then other stuff, people want it for $5 because no one else bid against them. And you know what? It's in our way. We cannot build out our practice facility and it still stay in there. So in the end, Mr. Duncan's directive of cleaning out this pole barn is taking place as we speak.
Mr. Lester,
maybe
you
by
know I have no
Christmas.
authority to make a directive of you. However, I
However,
move this board approve the surplus auction bid.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining. Let the minutes reflect that by a 5-0 vote, the surplus auction bids have been approved. All right, item I, discussion and/or action of approval for fiscal year 2021 audit selection. Should that be 21, 22?
yeah, I was the person who put this together. I need a secretary. Hopefully you do the next part and get me one.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm just trying to prove.
Is it right?
Oh, no, the year you just
I did
ended.
it right, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
Wait a
all right.
minute, you go, you're back. That's
Okay,
right.
Okay.
You know
If
what?
you had a secretary, they would answer.
They
that
would have
for
told you. I just need to go to bed. But anyway, Fife Jones, we've used them the last 2 years. I can say I used them in my job as a RESA director. They are very succinct, to the point, and get the job done. Amy Willard at the state endorses them. They bid was $17,900 to use them. We have to be audited by somebody. I will give you full disclosure, they weren't necessarily the lowest. But what you have to look at is they're good at what they do, and we've used them before, and as far as I'm concerned, if Miss Willard at the State Department endorses them and likes the way they do their work, I just like to keep moving forward with using Fife Jones. They're very professional, do a great job.
And do we get some reimbursement on that from the state, the cost of that, or not?
I don't think we do.
Not to my knowledge.
I don't remember. I don't know. I didn't.
We do not.
Okay, so, thank you.
No, it's one of those unfunded mandates. But anyway, it's $17,900 to use them for this past fiscal year of 2021. Thanks for saying that. I thought
Okay, you said 17.9.
$17,900 for them to audit us.
I'll make a motion that we approve the, what was the name of the company?
Fife
Fife Jones for our fiscal year 2021 audit.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Greg, seconded by Jay. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? And I will be abstaining. I have a relative that works not
Right.
directly with Fife Jones's audit team, I don't think, but
You don't know.
he's at the company. I don't know exactly his position, so I'm gonna abstain to err on the side of caution.
Okay.
All right, item number 14, personnel items. Now, before we get into this, I see on down here, I
Blanks.
have blanks.
Because we don't have those filled, and we're just gonna start with resignation, retirement, employment professional, and employment of service, and stop right there. Is that correct, Mr. King?
Yes.
Because that's all we could do at this point in time. But we weren't sure, cause you know, when you start fishing, that mean you get them in the net or in the hook. So right now, this is what we are bringing you to hire or to approve retirement, or resignation, excuse me.
Okay, well, under item 14, we have personnel items. If it's okay with everyone, I would like to break them down, into the different sections. We've got, resignations, retirements. We have Hobart Muncie, special ed, Summers County High School. And Carrie Vickers, social studies.
It's a big loss in social studies.
Do I have a?
I'll make the motion.
You
that
want,
we-
I move that this board approve the superintendent's recommendation for resignation/retirements as previously read
I'll second.
under 14.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining. Okay, so by a 5-0 vote, we have approved the retirements and resignations. All right, under employment professional personnel, I need them to pull Jody Weigel separate because I need to abstain on her. Ordinarily, I would leave the room, but since Stan's not here, I'll just abstain. We have Jeremy Wood for English at Summers County Comprehensive High School. Do I have that correct, Dan?
Yeah.
For the 21-22 school term.
I'll make a motion, we approve that.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Kenny, seconded by Greg.
Question.
Okay.
So, I should have asked this probably at a few meetings back, but when it says pending certification documentation, is there a time frame they have to get that certification documentation?
Yeah,
done?
usually what happens when people, get their certification back to us, there's an email from Robert Hagerman or his office. As long as it comes back, that's usually what we're waiting on, not the drug test. That usually gets back pretty quick. It's the certification coming back to us. Part of the problem you have sometimes, it's not a problem, is their license up and they're going to recertify, and they might be going from a, what do you call that? To a permanent, from a permit to a, what's the one before?
Out of field,
Yeah,
or a
so.
permit, or there's a
There's-
variety of different.
And now with these new ways of trying to license people, like the ACE program, that's what, like, Jody, she's not permitted yet or have it, but she's a candidate, and she's allowed a year to do 2 years really, but most people can get it done pretty quickly, and, so when you see that, that's what that means.
And they are, while we're waiting on documentation and certification, or as an ACE candidate, they are permitted to be around and working with the students independently.
Well, you have to make sure you have that background check first, but if they don't have the documentation, we don't have to hire them necessarily, because you don't just go ahead and move forward. I wanna make sure you have the documentation, because I don't put you in a position where legally you're gonna be hung out to dry, if that makes sense. Well, how long is it?
Which document are you talking?
I'm talking about like with certification when it comes into us.
When the certification request goes to the State Department, especially certain times of the year, they're overwhelmed with stuff.
Like
So
now?
Yeah, like now. So everything, if a person has submitted everything for a job that they're required to submit, but they haven't gotten that certification letter or some sort of authorization to hold that, from the State Department, they're kind of in this limbo status, and there's like a grace period that the State Department, and generally speaking, it's about a 90-day window, and they kind of call it conditional, like
That's the word I was looking for.
conditional.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it is kind of an awkward phase to be in, but it is common. But if something, it's kind of an awkward phase to be in, but it's not uncommon to do that pending certification.
I'm not worried about the certification as I am the background check. Because the certification, we can all work with that, but that background check, it comes back questionable, there's no 90 days, we're just done. I mean, that's just how it works,
Yeah, the Department of Ed has a 90-day disclaimer on their certification portal. In my experience recently, it's not been nearly that long. They've been processing them very, very
So
quickly.
their disclaimer says it could take up to.
Yeah, they just give you, about a year ago, I had to re-up on some stuff, and it was within days.
Okay.
As far as the background check, we're very strict about that. With these people, we'll start to call them tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And to get that set up.
Yeah, I just want to
That's
make sure
usually,
that's in place before.
I will say with the drug test, that's a pretty quick turnaround because we
Yeah.
typically do it at Appalachian Regional.
Right.
With our company that does the background check, about a week is what it takes to get that back.
Okay.
From a board member's perspective, you probably might view it as, we're approving this with the expectation this is all going to pan out. If it doesn't pan out, then what you approved doesn't exist, right? Yeah, so, yeah.
All right, so we had a motion and a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Jeremy Wood has been approved for English, Summers County Comprehensive High School. All right, Jody Weipel, Biology, Summers County Comprehensive High School.
I move that this board approve, as per the superintendent's recommendation, Jody Weipel.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining. Let the minutes reflect that by a 4-0 vote with one abstention, being me, that Jody Weipel has been hired for biology at Summers County Comprehensive High School. All right, and employment service personnel. Denise Bragg for Secretary 3 at the central office.
The reason
I
why.
move this board approve superintendent's recommendation to hire Denise Bragg as recommended by the superintendent.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Sorry, I jumped again. The reason why she can't start like tomorrow, like I would love her to, she is finishing up her contract as a cook on July 30th. So she can't technically start 2 jobs at one time, so she has to finish and then start. So that's why you see me complaining for another week that I don't have a secretary. I'm gonna use
She
that as long as I
be
can.
your secretary, or are you moving somebody else that's already there?
She will be our receptionist.
Okay.
And what she's gonna do is from reports from inside this room and outside this room, we don't answer the phone at our central office. So she already knows, Mr. Coon and I said, if you can do anything really well, is don't let that phone go without someone answering it. And you're allowed to put them on hold and say, can I put you on hold? We want someone to answer the phone, customer service. So she already knows that expectation. She'll get more later, but she is very willing to learn and jump in and run interference. She's gonna be the run interference person in our office with paperwork and helping out wherever we need to fill that void within the office. And she's just ready to go, and she's pretty excited. Mr. Coon and I had a nice conversation with her. We just needed to know when she was finishing up with cooking, but we went over to, well, we call it a quasi-interview over at the kitchen, and we talked with her, but she's excited to jump in. So we have heard enough that you guys can hold me to it in my evaluation. If you don't hear those phones get answered, then come vent up and get me, because I assure you we are going to do a better job of customer service. Come hell or high water, it's going to be answered, because I know that that's an issue with a lot of people smiling in this room. Oh, you just like me, don't you? Like a wart.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining. Let the minutes reflect by a 5-0 vote that we have hired Denise Bragg, Secretary 3, Central Office. All right, item 15, Superintendent's Report.
The last board meeting, it was asked to give an update on the high school, middle school, well, it's actually a 6-12 comprehensive high school for how we're realigning the principals. You should have a copy. I didn't highlight yours, it's just for me to see my information here. Before we move forward, at the very bottom it says teacher evaluations are divided up amongst administrators. Sometimes you can say it's going to be exactly this way, but it's not an exact science, and you know how that is, Ms. Hudson, how that works with walkthroughs and getting to people's rooms. But Mr. Hudgens, if you see at the top, he'll be in charge of the school finances, the CTE, facilities, the counselors, and he will evaluate those 3 administrators. Mr. Vickers, he has a great background in curriculum instruction. He's good with scheduling, testing. He'll deal with title funding now because that's a title school since the middle school will be in there now. So that's a little bit of a different aspect to that facility. He'll deal with instructional supplies and inventory, and he will deal with discipline in grades 6 through 9 and handle that. He comes from the background from middle school, so that works well. The reason why we put in the 9th grade is because 9th grade to me is still kind of squirrely when you're getting into that next realm of your chapter, so he can hand the baton off a little bit at that next level. Plus, you'll see with Miss Cochran, she will deal with discipline, but it'll be 612 with special ed kids. There are laws that apply to special ed and 504 students a little bit differently. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean you can just get away with murder here. And I know that's dramatic, but you just can't do whatever and say, well, I have a disability. That's not how it works. There has to be a manifestation of that. So take me as a diabetic. If my sugar level is way out of whack and I'm not behaving appropriately, that's a manifestation of me maybe mouthing off to a teacher. Not that I should do it, but I should be disciplined appropriately to my IEP. So what I'm saying is that person, Miss Cochran, her background is all special ed. So it fits perfectly for her to deal with the traditional education of special ed, but also disciplinary actions. Also, you see child nutrition. Well, it's a natural fit for her to deal with the cooks, because nothing's worse than when you ask someone to say, well, who's in charge? And they all say, I don't know. But now our cooks, custodians, and our teachers will have a clear expectation. You go to Miss Cochran if you have an issue with cooks. Not that you can't go to another assistant principal if there's an issue, because we all know that someone might not be around. It's just at the end of the day, who's in charge of whom. So that's what we're looking at. And then substitute teacher placement, because we know we're going to have substitutes in the building, and we got to. That's a lot of running interference. So Mr. Lusk, if you don't know him, he's a tall fellow who was a legend, I guess, at basketball, I found out. But he's also a really nice guy. I met his wife. Found out his wife has a sister who teaches for us at Jumping Branch. And just a breath of fresh air to see a guy who's willing to take on attendance, athletics, and discipline. He's willing to do that, guys. Not many people are willing to do that. And he says, I've done it before. I would like to continue to do that. And he's going to be in charge of those athletics. Now, he's not doing it by himself. Kathy Blevins will assist him, but she's still going to be the AD under his direction, and they'll work together. But since we now will have a school resource officer who'll work with that school resource officer, a natural fit, now that we found out we got that grant for the parole officer, that'll be a natural fit too. School resource officer is not discipline. PO is. There's a difference. School resource officer helps out with soft skills, works with kids, saying, we want to support you, stay out of trouble, kid, we'll work with you. POs will probably go on a visit maybe with our community schools people, or an SRO could go on a home visit. One might be a wellness check, another might be, you get your butt out of bed and go to school. That's the kind of conversation that'll need to be had. And I just put their community schools will be Unroe and Hudson. Those two are going to share an office. It's going to be transformed from the teacher's lounge or teacher workroom, and we're getting the Coke machine out of there, and we're getting the vending machine out of there, and we're going to make that an office area for those two. It's a natural fit because their office area will be right there where the cafeteria and everybody goes in and out. Their job is to keep an eye on kids and see the pulse of how they're doing. Someone has to be there for our kids. They're not there to discipline the kids. Even if they're a pain in the butt and they've got in trouble, she's to counsel and work with them on the side and say, look, I know you don't like that teacher. I know you don't like that class, but you can't act that way. How can I help you? And maybe have that conversation with the parents. Or she can maybe help out with the virtual school. They're that fail-safe that sees some things that we might not see as administrators or educators. They're going to feel the pulse of how things go. She'll deal with the high school. Mr. Unruh will deal with the middle school. It doesn't mean they can't mix, but with the community schools, at the end of the day, she has to report certain things to the community schools organization for data, because at the end of the day, all our data, it will be protected with FERPA laws, but they need to use that to lobby for money to make sure people like her can get money to pay for their skills to help support our children who might be having a tough time. And that's a good thing for our kids to have people they can go talk to, because some kids just don't like us. They're mad at the world, and they should be. If you have nobody at home taking care of you, I would be upset too. But if you have a face like hers or Mr. Unruh says, come to me anytime, I'm here. that's what we want, for kids to have someone to go to. Because if we have to discipline all the time, nobody wins, guys. And we want to get our kids to feel like someone cares about them. So they're right there near the cafeteria area. If you go on down, we're going to move Mrs. Kirkham's office into the main office, and we'll put the PO, the parole officer, in there because we want him off the beaten path. Because if anybody gets in trouble, we don't want to announce that, okay? So across the hall, though, we're moving Miss Cox out, and she's going to go down in the office that Mr. Vickers was in. Mr. Vickers is going to go into your office. So now you have a counselor, a principal there on that end of the hallway. Go down the other end of the hallway. Now you have Mr. Lusk. So we're trying to spread out our administrators and our counselors and get people in a way that makes it a better setting. Then once we add on to that building, we can recalibrate and see how things go. But I'm pretty excited about this school year. I think we've got a pretty good plan. I know the teachers will like knowing who their boss is, and nothing against Miss Hudson when she went in there with Mr. Vickers, but since she retired and she wants to come back and play ball with us, I think she will know the kids really well, and she also understands as an administrator how things work. But she's gonna be so less stressed because all she's gonna do is make kids feel good and say, look, when they get on you like this is what they mean, right? You can speak the language a little bit. So I just wanted to let you know how we're trying to revamp everything with 2 principals down on one end, and then Miss Cochran will be in the office where Dr. Green's office used to be, and then down the hall there's a conference room. That'll be perfect for IEP meetings and 504s for special ed and their parents. That's why we're trying to do that, for a better fit. So, did that answer your question, Mr. Andrew?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
You got a cheat sheet now to
I
answer
appreciate
any
it.
question. And then the only other thing I have is, I know nobody really wants to do this, and I know there's a concern about having more meetings, but we have had people resign and leave. We have a lot of hires we're trying to get and bring in, and then we also have a CEFP we have to amend by state code. When we went to the State Department to present how we're spending the money in the next few years, that big presentation we did in here, well, we also have to amend our CFP because Talcott Gymnasium was not in the crosshairs. So we have to amend and say we want to refurbish Talcott, we want to refurbish Hinton Area Elementary and add that cafeteria. We have to amend that. Well, if we don't get it in by the 28th of next week, it will not get on the state board for August. I don't mean to push you guys, but at the same time, it's just we got all this money. We told them how we want to spend it. You all understand that, but the CFP, Miss Willard said we need to talk to Micah. Mike has been working with Mr. Lester. Mr. Lester and I have been working towards that to get it all straightened up, because at the end of the day, we can't spend that federal dollars until we get it approved by you all and the State Department. You all know what we want to do. It's just we have to fill all the paperwork out now. It's more bureaucracy, red tape, but they have to have assurances at the federal level that the state's doing their job.
What do you want to have a special meeting?
Well, I didn't know if you guys want to do like an evening meeting on the 28th and do it like at 5 or 6. But I know Mr. Kuhn has his cutoff date on that date, right, about 3 o'clock?
3 o'clock, the
But
28th is our.
we don't have as many people as we like, and we know people are looking at applying. About how many positions would you say we still need to fill right now?
We have in the 20s.
For teachers, don't go into custodians yet.
Are
Are we in the 20s?
give you a good number here.
Since we've hired them, we kept them busy. Personnel's been pretty, the buses are holding strong, so keep them going, Jimmy, I appreciate it. I shouldn't have spoken, right?
That's a rough
Teaching's-
spot.
No, they're good.
Teaching's around a dozen.
12 now?
Yeah.
The problem is we have 3 special ed at that middle school level that we're trying to fill. That's a huge void there when you have that population struggle so much. So we are trying to fill that, and we are trying to put the feelers out. I talked to I know you guys might not know her, Kathy Hawks at Concord. She assured me that by January she could have a lot of TIRs for us. But right now, with the rotation of when people come into school and graduate, it's just lean right now. But come January, she's done me a huge favor. She goes, I'll put out the bells and whistles for you, Mr. Orville, because you've been good to our kids, and I'm glad you gave them a chance at summer camp. And that's how we got, I can't remember, if it's 4 or 5 of them from Concord.
3, yeah.
Or is it 3? Okay.
All for the summer program?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the points that Mr. Warble makes are extremely viable. There's tremendous competition out there to hire teachers, and we have an opportunity to get people under contract for these positions we need, given the finite number of them, and we got to move expeditiously on that. So, as board president, I would call for a special meeting of this board at 6 p.m. Thursday of next week, if that works for you, Superintendent Warble.
Thursday or Wednesday?
Thursday is
Well,
what he said.
what's the
Thursday?
28th?
28th is
Wednesday.
So I said,
You want it?
in my mind, I'm saying the 28th, whatever day that is. Is that
That's
Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Does that meet your deadline?
We would have time between the closing and the meeting
And
to
then
make
we
sure
would
that's lined
meet,
up.
then we would meet the guidelines of the State Board of Education and get on the agenda, because the due date's the 28th.
Okay.
All right.
I think
And,
if you guys don't
then-
mind doing it that way, we can wait till the evening hours. It doesn't have to be real late. But this meeting, the only thing I'm looking at is 2 things: personnel, CFP, and done.
All right.
So it doesn't have to be long.
If you gotta meet the guidelines, if we have it at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, does that meet it? Do you need it 6 p.m. on Tuesday?
Can't do it on Tuesday because I'm trying to thread the needle here, Mr. Duncan. We have postings come down on Wednesday. That's why we have to do a 2-for-1.
And we have to do it evening
All right.
because the postings
Okay.
As board,
Thursday.
as board president, I call for a special meeting at 6 p.m. next Wednesday, being July the 28th.
8.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
Okay, I have a motion and I will second it.
We don't have,
Oh, you're calling
we don't
for it,
have-
you're just calling for it, okay.
no, a special meeting could be called by the board president, or if 3 members, as I understand it, Mr. Broom, correct me, if 3 different members, independent of discussion with each other, were to call in and say, I think we need an independent, a special meeting, then that's the way we do it. Am I correct, Mr. Broom?
I believe you are president. Oh, man.
Mr. President.
Oh, man, you got one right, Mr. Duncan. We'll put that down in the scorecard.
Moving on.
He's on vacation. Come on.
Is that the last thing, Ms. Park?
Yeah,
Well, we have
ready.
discussion next agenda, which we've already
Yeah.
pretty much covered.
Can I add one item?
Yeah.
Student success stories for the next agenda.
Oh, yeah.
Would like for the CTE agriculture class / FFA students to come give us a report on their state convention and their upcoming pig roast, the success from that.
Hopefully it's successful, right?
Hopefully, yes.
If they're gonna successfully get some of my money.
Anything else?
I'm ready.
Policies.
If that's everything, I move that this meeting be adjourned.